Hello, everybody, and good Monday morning. I am already smiling, and you are going to be too as we get into this episode of No More Mondays, where we believe you can have a thriving career, business, and an amazing life on your terms. And I bring you people who have not only stories of inspiration, but fantastic advice to help you live and work more authentically. Throughout your professional life, you have probably heard somebody say something like, the best careers are built, they're not found. There's a very good chance if you listen to this podcast regularly, it was me or one of my guests. Climbing the career ladder can look a lot different than it used to, where incremental raises and title increases eventually moved that needle over a slow growth path. But today it's totally different, and our guest has leveraged that fact. Nick Agharkar started his career as an attorney only to realize that the financial world continued to call and beckon him. And after operating, and he's found a way to operate across these two lines of highly regulated fields that are often hard to cross over. He met a lot of challenges and came with perseverance and some creativity to overcome obstacles and create and design his own career. He's a wealth advisor at Shorehaven Wealth and a tax attorney at Crown Point Tax and Wealth Counsel. And even more importantly, he is my friend from our wonderful days at Carnegie Mellon. Please welcome Nick to the show. Nick, welcome to No More Mondays.
Hey, Angie, it's great to see you. And yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
It's always so fun to, it's not like we were out of touch, right? Good old social media helps you keep in tune, but it's always so fun for me to reconnect from people that I was truly friends with and yucked it up with, 25 years ago in college. And we've come a long way since those grandiose ideas of us being talent scouts together.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the funniest story, right? Is sitting in a bar and getting approached by some rando about being a talent scout and finding models. I think that's what we were actually going to, we were considering this. That was the crazy part.
We were actually, and here's the best part. Nick and I chatted a month or two ago, and in the process of kind of getting the meeting together, he actually, I totally had forgot about this. And he was like, yeah, we thought we were going to be talent scouts, which, by the way, I have to let you all know is hilarious because Nick and I are at least 3 feet shorter than anyone that we would be recruiting.
And also, like, what do we know about models? What are we doing? That would have been insane.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, no less.
I know, right? A hotbed for beauty. Sorry for the people of Pittsburgh. I don't mean to offend.
Sorry for the people of Pittsburgh, and sorry for everyone out there who has actually made modeling a career. God bless you. Go eat a piece of cake. Now, we've wised up. But neither of us are doing exactly what we studied, which I think is interesting. And I think we're better people for it, which is kind of what we're going to talk about. So, I mentioned as we were kind of getting into this that you have found a way to work in two industries that can be hard to work in. And I think it would be good to just kind of level set with everybody out there on why working in law and wealth management is tricky. So give us a little like 101 lesson on how those two industries interact and where restrictions come into play.
Yeah. So, I am with a registered independent advisory shop called Shorehaven Wealth Partners here in New Jersey. And then I also have my own law firm, Crown Point Tax and Wealth Counsel. And the reason we have to keep them separate is obviously one is regulated by the SEC, the other is regulated by the state bars that I'm a member of. And the thing is that the industry, the financial services industry, needs the support of both the legal and the accounting industry, right? They kind of have to work together for a client to have a holistic picture of their entire financial life. But the problem arises when we have advisors or a lawyer who maybe doesn't give the complete picture, right? Because they're a little afraid, they don't want to get into the financial services realm, right? Or the accountant who I talk to all the time. Accountants petrified of the unauthorized practice of law. And so they rarely give, direct advice to their clients, but rather just more general sort of feelings. And then the client makes the choice, but that often leaves people in kind of this conundrum because as we talked about, right, there isn't a lot of financial education out there that's really trustworthy, right? A lot of people don't know what they're reading is correct. And so there's a lot of questions that go unanswered. And so by marrying my understanding of the law, the tax code, estate planning, with financial management as well, and my understanding of economics and the markets, it's really a way to give a client a holistic picture of their financial life. And the biggest thing I do is education. The first several meetings with any client is about educating them on what they have, how the laws work, how the markets work, what risk tolerance they really are at, and versus, maybe they're taking too much risk. So it's a lot of these educational conversations up front. And I really try and co-create a portfolio or a sort of even an asset protection plan with the client so that they feel like they've got an input, right? And they understand what they're doing, what they're getting.
Well, and I love the education piece because there is fiscal education, even just down to how to balance a checkbook, which no one does anymore because of online banking, is never taught to us at an age where we should learn it. We kind of learn it on the fly when we have to. But I also think from a wealth management perspective, and you and I have talked about this offline before, there's almost like this mystery curtain that is there like on purpose to keep us a little bit kind of like in the dark about what's happening with our own money. And so I appreciate the education and the transparency. And just even very practically, I've been working with a new financial manager, side note, before this whole conversation started to pick up again. And I was like, darn. But anyway, the amount of back and forth I've had to do between, hey, go ask your attorney how to set up this in your solo 401k. And I'm like, I don't care. Just do it. Right. The amount of this going on, it has probably made this take 2 months longer than it would have if I could have just said, hey, tax guy and wealth guy, how do I do this? So I love that you were able to like blend two things that can complement each other, even though getting into it had some stickiness, which is the career by design stuff I really, really want to get into. So finance and law, both highly regulated field. People would also guess pretty rigid and that don't leave a lot of room for creativity. And you found a way to kind of do this, but it wasn't met without resistance. So how did this actually come together?
Yeah, and this starts, with graduating from CMU. So I have a degree in economics from Carnegie Mellon, and a lot of my friends were going to Wall Street right after school. But I looked at what they were going to be doing, and they were going to be making, and this is 2003, they were making maybe $40,000 a year, and most of them were from the New York, New Jersey area, so they'd be living at home for a couple of years to save money. So I thought, you know what, that sounds like a sucker's path. I'm going to go to law school, and then I'm going to be rich. And so
I'm going to go do one of the other 5 traditional careers that existed for us in 2003.
Right. And also, there wasn't all of this information on YouTube. It's funny. I tell my kids I'm older than Google, and they don't believe me. So yeah, I know. Oh, actually, my boy asked me.
We were the people who got the you have to be invited for a Gmail account. We're older than Google.
I remember. Yeah, or an EDU account for Facebook. Oh yeah. So we were at the dawn of the internet, right? No, my son actually asked me if I was born in the 1900s the other day. I was like, oh,
oh crap. And you're like, you had to pause for a second and go, oh yeah, I was.
Yeah, I was. But at any rate, so I saw what they were doing, and I said, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to be super wealthy. So I moved out to the West Coast, Southern California. I thought I was going to be a talent agent, right? So still on the talent tip.
That theme lasted a little while longer than I would have expected.
Right? Than you think, right? I really planted the seed. So I thought, that's my career. Coming out of law school, though, law school really changed me. I had a professor that my federal courts professor actually had us assist with a Supreme Court case that he had. So we went to the Supreme Court. It was about equal justice, and so I sort of took a litigation approach then to my career. I started with Binder and Binder, if anyone remembers that defunct law firm, right out of law school. And I moved back to the East Coast after law school, about 2 years after law school. And now my friends were about 5 years into their Wall Street careers, living it up in New York. And I was making $48,000 a year. So
that went sideways.
Yeah. That went backwards. That really backfired.
Yeah.
So I moved back to the city in 2008, which we all know was a great time for finance. And I actually tried. So I tried to just get straight up into Wall Street firms, Wall Street law firms, big banks, anywhere. I sent out, and this is, again, we're dating ourselves. I literally sent out hard copy mail, cover letters with envelopes, everything, the resume, right? I sent probably about 500 out, right? I got absolutely no responses. And throughout my career, I continued to try and network my way to, get interviews. I got an interview at Bridgewater that I absolutely tanked. It was terrible. I kept trying different things, and it just never really clicked. And so I just continued on this path of litigation, and I built and then I sold my own law firm. And that's when I really came close again to being, you know what, I've got a little bit of money. How about I just day trade, right? I was coming up with crazy ideas like, oh, I'll trade and I know how the markets work, so I'm going to do that, right? And I kept trying to build it myself, but nothing really stuck until I was actually out of law entirely. So I sold my law practice and I was in management consulting. And during that time in management consulting, those clients sort of off to the side would say, but you're still an attorney, right? Because I have this side hustle. And these are people at, Fortune 50 companies. So they have a W-2 job. They're executives, but they've also started this side business. Or they have questions about, hey, you know what? I'm getting taxed on these restricted stock units. I don't understand why, right? And so I would explain these things to them. And that's when the light bulb went off that, hey, you know what? I think this is it. This is how I can sort of bridge that gap and get to a place where I've now sort of created my own career, right? Where I'm a tax attorney. I do to people's taxes. I do tax strategy. And then I also help people manage their money, right? And protect their wealth and grow their legacies. So it was something that sort of, again, happened, but it wasn't without, kind of a belief that I could still do it.
Oh, I want to lean into the belief system for a minute, because what I think is also so interesting about, I have this, you spoiler alert, we already know we're on the same page about this, everyone. So this is going somewhere, but I feel like everything you just said is so entrepreneurial, right? Like, I could do this. Let's throw some stuff at the wall and kind of see what sticks. But in a way, some of that ended up working out because it was the learning and the weeding in and out, that once you arrived at the point, that's what I think is so incredible about this. Like the entrepreneurial journey or career by design is a lot of times you arrive at it. You really actually don't even find, like, if careers are built, not found, you tend to arrive at the point of it being building, which sounds like this kind of happened for you. All of these various things and trials came together at a time and place that was finally right. You had manifested it.
Right. Nothing happens until you're ready for it, right? And I had to go through some pretty tough times, right? Of, at points I had just given up, right? Of, look, it's just never going to happen for me. No one's ever going to look at me that way, and really being down on myself, right? And I've tried so many different things. I lost a lot of money along the way, right? And so it's can be really discouraging, but it's just the constant and consistent belief that I can do this. I know that I can do this. It just isn't presenting itself right now.
Well, and mentally, when you're in that moment or that long moment of this isn't working, I'm close to giving up, but I believe, tell me more about, I almost want to ask, like, how does that look and feel in reality? I know how it looks and feels for me, but I've never had somebody else like explain that their feelings of like, why am I keep getting beat up, but I still believe I have this thing. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. You have to set an intention deeply within yourself, right? And this is something I learned in therapy, to be quite honest, right? So, the way that this sort of breakthrough happened, wasn't magical. It happened because I finally put in the inner work. So my marriage was on the rocks, and we went to counseling. And we did these sort of family of origin stuff. And I talked about my upbringing. My parents are immigrants from India. So anyone that has immigrant parents know it's a pretty strict household. But then in addition, the therapist came up with some things to look at in terms of my mother perhaps having some narcissistic tendencies. And I looked up kind of what that means for me as a child of a narcissistic parent. And it came out that, look, these folks have trouble with interpersonal connections. They're quite angry all the time, difficulty feeling. Wow, that explained a lot of my life struggles. And so I went deep within myself and really sort of repaired some of those traumas and those wounds, and really came out with a meditation practice, journaling, and every day sort of believing and actually, there's a great book by this coach, Lou Tice, that I read initially, and it's called Smart Talk, right? And it's about changing first that inner dialogue, right? And that's where it started for me, was instead of saying things like, God, I'm so stupid, like that's just awful, saying things like, you know what, that's not like me. Usually I don't do that. That's strange that happened, right? How can I fix it? Rather than being so down and negative all the time, it's changing that mindset. And that set me on this path of, okay, yeah, maybe, you know what, I shouldn't be a litigator. I should be doing something in business, right? Let's try, creating businesses. So I created a bunch of failed businesses. I tried a marketing firm. I tried to create an Amazon store. I tried all kinds of different things, right? That I believe like, okay, I can believe I can do it, right? But in doing those things, and I tell people this all the time, the learning curve that I sort of subscribe to is one that's not linear, right? So it goes all the way up. I think that, if you look at the graph, right, it goes up quite quickly, right? But then,
we're 70-degree angle.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But the thing is that when you get to this point, right, you think because you've learned so much so quickly, you're on top of what I call Mount Stupid, because you believe that, oh my God, I know all this stuff, right? And then you get punched in the face and you go all the way back down, realizing that, oh God, there's so much more I don't even know. I have no idea. And then you build back up slower to understand, okay, here are all the things I don't know. So you're a little more cautious, right? A little more humble. And there's that humility.
Yes. It's
right?
like infinite false summits. And the parallels between these are, you and I, this is apparently we have just been like walking adjacent for the last 25 years without even knowing it. But here we are, we came back together at the right time. Cause I love what you said that about like, you have to be ready, and it required the work on yourself in order to be ready, which I'm guessing then made the climb got probably a lot less steep because it started to become clearer what you should be doing versus I'm going to try, right?
Right. And again, it's the figuring out, always trying to force the how, right? So I talk about, you just kind of have to leave that unknown, right? And a lot of people come to me and they say, well, wait a minute. So I can just think, I just have to sit here? No, that's not it, right? So I talk a lot about the RAS, the reticular activation system in our brains, right? So it's right above the spinal cord. And it's the thing when you want a new car, right? And you're really thinking about this new car, you see it everywhere, right? You see those things all over the place. It's similar. If you just think about what you want and what your life would look like if these things that you wanted happened, those opportunities will present themselves. But then it's up to you to pounce on it, right? Like it's that old joke where the man is drowning and he's a devout Christian, so he's praying to God that someone's going to save him, right? He's in the middle of an ocean and a boat comes by and he says, no, God is going to save me. Then a larger boat comes by. No, God is going to save me. A freaking yacht comes by. No, God is going to save me. Finally, he drowns and he goes to see God. And God says, well, he goes, you didn't save me. And God said, I sent you 3 boats. You can't just sit there. Take action, right? It's the next thing you have to do is once you see those opportunities, pounce on them, right? Absolutely go after them if they feel like they're in alignment with what you're trying to get.
I love this so much because I have to point out that a Carnegie Mellon engineer and economist have just walked into a yoga studio.
Right? Yeah.
But this is so, and I'm wondering if it's because you and I have similarly like left and right brains, right? Analytical, but like strategic and creative with that thread of entrepreneurial spirit that really makes you look at things differently. Because I have found that exact same thing where you get put in the right time and the right place. This is not luck. You arrive, but you have done the work to get yourself there. And I believe that any success in business. I also love the fact that you started to flip the script, right? Instead of looking at this as how do I get into law or finance, I'm going to take it as a business angle, which started to become the right action. And I tell people all the time, like entrepreneurship especially, and I would even venture to say success in most career tracks is 80% mindset, because you can choose whether to be miserable or happy or at least content in a situation. And you can also choose to change it and do the work on yourself and the exploration to actually get to something you said that I'm going to put 2 and 2 together. And I love, this is the woo-woo of 2 Carnegie Mellon technical grads here, is you keep hammering the how, but the answer's in the why.
Yeah. And honestly, the how will take care of itself. You have to have that intentional why, right? Of why am I doing this? And honestly, it has to be of service, right? It has to be of service to something or some greater good for it to really actualize, right? Because if you just want money just for money's sake, it will almost likely never come, right? Because you're constantly wanting it just for its own sake. What will you do with it? What will it feel like? What things will you do next, right? I talk about this with my clients all the time. They say, oh, I want to retire at 67. Then what? Well, then I'll be retired. Okay, but what will you do all day, right? What are the things that are actually going to happen, right? So you can't just be the dog that catches the car and has no plan. You've got to think through, okay, what is it that I want? Why do I want it? Why is it important to me? And how can I then create this space for myself to see the opportunities around me? Because if you're constantly negative and you're constantly saying, "Oh, it's just never going to happen. It's just never going to happen," well, then you're never going to see any of the opportunities that are right in front of you, right? You're going to miss the boats that are sailing right past you because you're in a mindset where you feel like it's just never going to happen for you.
I'm a huge fan of that book.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Carol Dweck.
Yeah.
There is actual scientific proof because I kind of make fun of woo, but also I'm woo, not woo woo, right? There's a difference and a fine line, but there is mindset and perspective and abundance versus scarcity are all actually scientifically proven. And there is a power of positivity that I think a lot of people discount, that you can't manifest something. No, you're not just, like you said, pray for God when 3 boats are going by. There were your actions, right? But I feel like so many people don't allow themselves to do that or don't even see the boats.
Yeah, and I think it's because, again, they don't believe in any of this woo-woo, right? And for me, it's not even woo-woo, right? I mean, you think about Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the eminent physicists, obviously a man of science, right? One of my favorite quotes from him is that we are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. We are made of star stuff, right? So everything in the universe is matter, right? We knew several things about matter. It can't be destroyed, right? No matter can actually be antimatter. It doesn't go away. It just changes its state, right? Well, how did it come into creation? How did it happen, right? Well, I mean, think about anything, literally this microphone, this computer, all of it started as an idea. Someone had an idea and then they thought about it and then they manifested it. They made it, right? So it's not as if this isn't in front of us, right? Everything that we have is a thought. And again, there's that great Shakespeare quote, there is no good or bad, thinking makes it so. It's the truth. It's your perspective. There's no such thing as a good thing or a bad thing. They're just things. How you engender them is what gives them and imbues that power over you. But if you can just accept that this thing is a thing and it happened, and this is hard. I'm not saying this is easy because we're people, right? But if you can just accept things that happen to you as, okay, that happened. It is what it is, right? I need to then figure out what's next. Right? Instead of constantly trying to assign meaning to these things, right?
Yes.
Maybe there doesn't need to be a meaning to it. Maybe we can just say, okay, now what? Right now, what do I do to continue on? And one of the things that I've been thinking about lately, it's the sort of the switch from determinism to teleology, right? So if you think about cause and effect, right? So, you've got a friend who was horribly abused as a child, and so now he's a shut-in, right? So the cause was the trauma from the child, and now the effect is that he, is a shut-in. But if we look at it in terms of goals, right, and what's his aim then, right? So your friend is a shut-in. So what must he want? Well, he must want to be a shut-in, right? Because if his goal was to get over it and to actually get better, he would do something else. But if we look at your actions and then think, okay, well, what's his goal, right? Why is he doing that? Yeah. If you start thinking that way about your daily life and the things that you do every day, and you say, if someone was watching me right now, what would they think I'm aiming at? What am I trying to achieve? And if it's not the thing that you're after, change the activities, right? Then align your activities with what you actually want out of life. And you'll find that things just open up for you in a really big way.
Well, and it goes back to y'all probably are sitting out there going, man, Angie talks a lot about these 3 letters. If you know where the why, you can align those things. If you don't know the why, or you don't know the general, compass direction you're aiming for, you can't determine what aligns, what doesn't. And if you're just doing random stuff, or if it's actually going to be, productive, moving along some path. It doesn't have to be, it can be a winding path. But it's at least like, okay, I'm heading, northeast. Okay, cool. But if you don't even know that, you get in the car, you're going to drive around in circles.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the other thing is that life isn't linear like that, right? Life is just a series of moments. And so in each moment, you have options and choices to make. But those moments will pass you by if you are constantly focusing on just this linear thought of,
Yeah.
I need it to keep going this way, right?
Yeah.
But take the moment and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Because that's honestly where magic is. But we are all so involved in our own selves and here's what I need to do today and sorting out what I should and shouldn't be doing rather than actually just living now because it's in front of us, right? I mean,
We're waiting to retire at 67.
exactly, right? I mean, why not now, right? What are we
Why
doing?
not now?
Exactly. And I mean, I tell people this story all the time. My dad retired for 1 year. He went right back to consulting because, it's what else? What do they know
What's he
to
going to
do?
do?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's building that muscle of, okay, well, what do I want? What do I want out of life? What do I want from myself? What do I want from others? And I mean, really, the biggest thing is also dropping those expectations of others. You can't put those on other people. You can only expect from yourself. And
Mhm.
so, I unfortunately run into people that just get very angry with other people, right? And they can't seem to be okay with being disliked. And that's a big thing. A big thing that I had to learn was just being okay that, not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to want to work with me. And that's fine. That's okay. And if you don't like me, cool. Be angry about it. But I'm not going to, right? Because it's a waste of my time and a
It's
waste
a
of my
waste of you. Yeah.
yeah, it's a waste of my brain power, my energy to be concerned about whether you like me or not. And that took a long time for me to internalize that and just be okay with, hey, you know what? If you don't want to hang out with me, cool. I can move on.
Because she's listening, I have to say hi, Mom, because she's sitting here going, I know what you're talking about. Because my mom is a people pleaser who doesn't like confrontation. So guess what is very, very hard for her, and therefore was very, very hard for me, which is the people don't like me. And the thing is, I find, and you're probably the same way from a person because of your personality. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, there's a lot of rub there with the dislike. And what I finally realized through a lot of challenges that brought on animosity and the critics was that the the anger towards us is actually more about them and not us. And if you can wrap your head around that, it becomes a little easier to not take it so personally, and then you condition yourself with a thicker skin, and each time it happens it's less and less and less. But ultimately I decided that those people weren't going to get to take my joy.
Right. And you can't control them, right?
No.
Again, we've talked about this. The only thing that you can control is your reaction to it, right?
Yep.
So if you believe that what this person has done is bad, and you want to harbor some resentment and anger towards it, that only eats at you. That
Yeah.
doesn't go towards them. That they aren't feeling what you're feeling. You have to let it go, right? And that's so hard. It's very difficult. I'm not saying these things.
It takes that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. I
Yeah,
also would like to welcome you to what I believe is a new career by design between Angie and Nick, and that is scientific philosophy. Please welcome to the show.
We could philosophize all day about
We
how
can
to live our best
philosophize
life.
all day and shout into the void together. And I also think it's very important right now, and we won't go any further than that, to focus on what you can control. You can control how you react. You can control what you do. You can control how you talk to and how you treat people, and that will bring about what it brings about. And I
Yeah.
think this is a good time to start. Maybe there's little bits of practical advice in here, whether you all out there realize it or not, but we're going to go a little bit even more straightforward. So let's say there's somebody out there sitting that's sitting in inaction, but they've got the inkling that it's not right. Maybe there's somebody on a traditional path like engineering or law or even finance, and they're thinking, I want to do something unconventional. What advice would you give them? What advice would you give yourself if you could 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's checking your inner monologue, right? So what is your inner critic saying and how are they saying it, right? Because there's constructive criticism and then there's just bashing yourself, which I feel like too many people get into that trap of just calling themselves stupid and they're just never going to be able to learn this stuff. And I've had to even coach my daughter through this, right? She's 8 years old and sometimes she'll be struggling with math and she'll say things like, I'm just bad at math. And I have to stop her and say, no, that's not the mindset. It's just that this is a hard problem. So let's break it down and let's figure this out because you are good at math. So it's changing that inner monologue and saying, okay, these aren't bad things. I just need to figure this out. I need to figure out, why am I being frustrated by this? What's blocking me here? And honestly, It sounds so cliche, but it started for me with gratitude. It's looking around and saying, okay, what is working, right? What am I
Yes.
grateful for? What's really happening that I'm really grateful that these things are happening, and just listing that out, right? And starting a gratitude journal. It really
Yay.
does make a difference. It really does make a
It
difference in
really
your.
does. And it is scientifically proven. And my addition to that is do it in the morning and the evening, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times I'll tell people wake up and affirmation-y, but like 3 things you're grateful for about yourself and that you're good at. And I usually say in 3 days it'll be hard because I have nice hair is not allowed to be repeated every day. And then at night, 3 things you were grateful for that day. And it is scientifically proven again, you're from your scientific philosophers over here. It is scientifically proven that that does change your brain chemistry overnight while you sleep when you end and start the day with a positive thought.
Yeah. And it's also, it keeps your energy up all day, right? I mean, and also you start looking out for things to be grateful for, right? Throughout the day. Because again, it's that reticular activating system. It's the thing that will show you what you're thinking about. So if you're thinking about, hey, you know what? At the end of this day, I got to come up with 3 things that I'm grateful for. Guess what? You're going to find a lot of gratitude. There are things to be grateful for during your day, right? A lot of
Yeah.
things are going to happen to you suddenly that, wow, I'm really glad I had that conversation. I'm really happy I was at that meeting, right? You're going to start noticing again the moments of your life that perhaps you just aren't paying attention to. So, and it's again, it also takes a lot of getting out of your own way, right? I think we spend a lot of time buried in our phones, heads down, just sort of scrolling mindlessly and letting our minds just wander and be on autopilot because we can't stand being alone with ourselves. But why is that? It's because
Oh,
we don't treat ourselves well, right?
because we have no grace for ourselves,
That's
right? That
right.
is a very, very, very good. Oh, I want to highlight that. What Nick just said is part of the reason we doom scroll and lean into all the distractions available to us is because we don't like being alone with ourselves. When was the last time you ever sat in a room with absolutely nothing on? Or I'm a big fan of Get Outside because it forces you to do this. When was the last time you just spent time with yourself?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is I talk to people and I'm like, meditation has helped me greatly. And they say, oh, I can't meditate. Or they say, I'm bad at meditating. It's impossible. It's impossible that you can't, and it's impossible to be bad at it because it's sitting. It's just sitting quietly and not thinking.
Which we do for hours and hours and hours a day.
Exactly. Right? Just sit quietly and just sit. That's all you have to do.
And
You
just
don't
don't
have
do
to close
anything
your
else.
eyes.
So again, change the perspective. It isn't meditation, it's just disconnection, right? Sit with nothing else for 5 minutes, right? These are all really small things. And this is the kind of stuff, by the way, I got to tell you, I have a feeling, we've got competing bookshelves here. And I have
Yeah.
a feeling some of the same covers are in them because
Yep.
this is the stuff I have really appreciated and found it has made a difference of like these just like very small but habitual things that you can lean into that aren't a big lift, right? Sit and be with yourself for 5 minutes. Spend 3 minutes in the morning and at the end of the day being grateful and recognizing what you have to be thankful for. These are small things that I actually would challenge you all to do. Nick and I are going to challenge you to spend 1 month doing, let's add a third, right? So we've got meditation, journaling. What's a third small thing we can challenge people to do for the next month? And then they can tell us what it did for them.
Yeah, I read for 20 minutes a
Read.
day. Read any book. It doesn't matter. Read a book. But I would urge you to get a physical book, right? And actually
Yeah.
sit and read, hold the book and really be present with the action of just reading, right? It gives your mind something to do. And again, you'll learn something, right? And look, I tell people this. So I met my wife on Match.com, and I attribute that success to actually to Tina Fey, because just before I redid my Match.com profile, I read Bossy Pants. And she is so funny in that book, and that book is so well written that I wrote in that style for my Match.com
It
profile.
influenced your profile.
And it worked, right? And so, I mean, look, I think that this is part. That's a cheeky little story, but I mean, this is part of it, right? This is just sort of, look, you never know what you're going to take away from a book. And I look, I'm going through this with my kids right now. They're still, the little one is still learning to read, but I tell them, look, once you get past this learning to read, you read to learn, and that's when whole new worlds open up, right? Is because you're
Yep.
able to think through these things that you're reading about, and this sort of gets your brain going. So that's kind of my devotional practice in the morning is meditation, journaling, and then I read for 20 minutes.
Read, right? Be still. Just
Yeah.
be. I love that. I'm a huge fan of, because also there's something about the tactile of the pages of the book.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to run out of room, but
I know. I've had to do
it's
some e-reader. I know. I do both, but yeah, I think we both have the same problem with collecting books that we.
there's I can't remember the name of it. There's
I know
actually a
there's
Japanese word for it, right?
Yeah.
And the Tina Fey thing is a fun little, like, just kind of like, as we take this from this big meaty, like, it's not actually that. This isn't that hard, but it can feel heavy if you just don't know yourself, right? But the Tina Fey thing is such a light and fun way to just put a stamp on this, that how these very small things can impact you. You know, I have a business growth mastermind, and a couple weeks ago, one of the guys in it looks at me and he goes, "Angie, you think everything can be solved by a book?" And I'm like, "It can. There's really not that much original thought out there. You can usually find it. It's just which perspective you appeals to you."
Yeah, I mean,
And so
to go back to the career issue, right? People ask, like, "Oh, how do you know all this stuff?" Right? And literally, one guy challenged me that said, "There's no way you can know all of these things and be wearing these two hats unless you're the smartest person in the world." I read it in a book, man. I read it in a book. This is all written down, right? If you take the time to actually read it in the book and study, you will learn, and you will create your own expertise, because you're going to take your own spin off of what you read and learn and develop your own systems, right? But again, it's out there. You just have to be willing to sit down and do the work and read, because there's so much information out there that, honestly, I'm reading a book now by a French philosopher, The Maddening of the Crowd, right? And it's talking about the upturning of the markets in the 1600s and 1700s, and how it's the same, right? It's just these mad crowds, the same issues that we're dealing with AI now, right? Everyone's rushing into these unknowns, and it's just a frenzy. And I can't comment at all about the efficacy of it, but that's human nature and psychology, right? Of, oh man, I see one person doing it, I better do it too, otherwise I'm going to miss out.
Bandwagon effect is real, and history repeating itself, also real.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but I think it's so true, in that these are the moments when you find yourself, and when you also find what you really enjoy and can sink your teeth into. You know, scientific philosophers here, I believe, share a similar brain that is a sponge that cannot release any sort of information, even if you wanted to, because people will say to me too, like, "How do you know that?" And I just, once it goes in, it kind of doesn't come out, which we use to our advantages in how we have designed our careers. But I learned that by consuming and doing it and figuring out what various perspectives that I gravitated towards. And I feel like the big message here is lean into yourself and know yourself, and allow the exploration and allow the doing that can help you discover your career by design.
Yeah, and it's going to feel horribly scary at the beginning,
Yep.
right? Because it's hard. It's hard to sit there and have your thoughts, right, and be the only thing with you. But to sort of get over that, you just kind of have to give yourself grace, right? And anytime intrusive thoughts come in, just say, you know what, I'm going to let that one go. And just go back to that quiet space and center yourself.
Yeah. And you're going to, even if you just continue doing the same job with this type of awareness and knowing, everything becomes, has a lot less toil behind it. Grace is a pretty, there is an amazing thing about grace. And so I think that's a good little reminder to leave you all with, how do we find you, and what's next for you? What are you up to over there?
Yeah, no, listen, we're getting into tax season, so a lot of tax returns to do, but I also prepare tax strategies for folks. Obviously, we manage money. You can find me either at crownpointtax.com or shorehavenwealthpartners.com. You can anywhere on the internet, LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I think it's not private anymore, just because I barely go on Facebook anymore. So you guys can find me in a number of places, but also you can email me, right, at Nick at shorehavenwealth or Nick at crownpointtax.com. I guess we can put those in the show notes. But yeah, that's where I'm around.
Follow along with Nick. He makes tax and finances actually kind of fun and accessible, which I think is awesome. And even some greater wisdom around how you can live and work more authentically. I love how that all weaves into this. And, you know, who knew a drinking buddy from 25 years ago would end up being a share in the same scientific philosophy about life and career. I love it. Thank you so much.
You got to stop saying 25 years ago.
I
know.
There's no way I'm that old.
I know.
No, there's no way I'm that age.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
a better way to put it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to sit with myself on that one. Nick, my old friend, this is amazing to catch up. And I appreciate you being willing to record it so we can give everybody out there some amazing wisdom. You've had an awesome journey that has helped you find yourself, more importantly than even the work you're doing to impact people. And no matter how structured your career, your professional trajectory is, you have the power to change it, and you have the power to create it. The best careers are built, not found. And Nick and I encourage you to dig in and seek out what's right for you. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of No More Mondays. I'll see you next week for another episode.
Thanks.